So Morena, tēnā koutou, no mai haere mai, ko Laura Gemmell toko ingoa, and I'm from Eco Choice Aotearoa, the country's official eco label. For anyone that is unfamiliar with us, we certify products and services according to our strict environmental criteria. Ki ngā monga whakakahi, ki ngā waituku kiri, ki ngā matawaka o te motu, ka nui te mihi. To those who connect to the mountains, the rivers and oceans across the land, hello and welcome to you this Māori Language Week, and to our discussion on repair over replace. So to begin with, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce our rockstar panel. We have Greg and Neil Brevner from Blunt, makers of the best umbrellas in the world. So thank you for joining us, Neil and Greg. We have Saskia Verez from Proxima Consulting with the beautiful marine background there. We have Claire Hobby coming to us live from Texas, and Claire is from TCO Development, which is the global certifiers of IT products and services. And we also have Paul Smith from Fixed First. Great to see you, Paul, who previously, before starting his own business, Fixed First, was with Consumer for many years. So really exciting to have all of you on the call. Thank you again for giving up your time today, and thank you for all of you for joining us as well. So today's webinar, just to give you a bit of a sort of a lay of the land, is going to be broken into three parts. So the first part, we're really going to sort of unpack the right to repair movement, what it is, the origin story there. Then we're going to sort of talk through some of the environmental benefits of repair. And then finally, we're really going to dig into Blunt's journey with repair as a business. And after each sort of stage, we'll try and tackle as many questions as we can as we go through. For any that we don't get to, we will make a note of them and try our very best to follow up and connect you with the right people to get the answers that you need. All of our email addresses are online and things like that, so you can hunt us down very easily. So repair over replace, transforming consumer choices. Hat tip to Gatami, who is managing our slides today as well, the brains behind this webinar. I guess to jump straight in, I think it would probably be good. I know a lot of people have probably varying degrees of understanding of the right to repair movement, but Claire, obviously you have a bit of an international perspective, and when we talk about the right to repair, it often revolves around electronics. So that perhaps it's a good place to bring you in to start and to give us a bit of an understanding of the history behind the right to repair movement and TCO's role in that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Laura, and thanks everyone for joining us today. What an important topic, and it's really one of those topics that every single one of us, whether we're an individual consumer or representing a global corporate, we can really take some action on repair and repairability and putting an ask out into the marketplace for our product vendors to do better and to design differently so that we can repair all kinds of products that we use. And what a great visual that you're showing now. So say yes to repair. And that's key. We all need to say something and not just sort of wish that things could be different. And we'll get to that during today's session, I'm sure. So if we think about the right to repair, I think it goes back to somewhere around 2012, I think. Here in the United States, there was a bill calling for the ability to be able to repair our own cars. Started with automotive industry, right? And we're sort of locked in a bunch of categories to take our cars or our farm equipment or our IT equipment only to authorized repair shops or licensed repair facilities. We can't access the spare parts ourselves. We can't access the repair schematics or the manuals ourselves, and it's expensive. So I think right to repair is a couple of things. It's like we want to be able to repair our stuff. We want it to be affordable and accessible. We don't want to throw stuff away that ends up in landfill. And also it's a movement to kind of put some legislative pressure on our lawmakers to enable right to repair. in our markets, and kind of nudge industry to make it available, to make it more accessible, so that we're not locked into a certain kind of repair and locked into replacing our products when maybe that's not actually what we want to do in the first place. Our organisation called TCO Development, we run TCO Certified, and that's kind of like Eco Choice. It's an eco label for IT products. Anyone can use it. We look at right to repair. We like to say the end starts at the beginning. And when we look at it that way, for us, this is very much about product design. How are we designing computers and monitors and phones and tablets right up front so that they can be repaired? We're making repair the mainstream approach. We're putting safer chemicals, safer substances into these machines. They are being designed from the get-go to be modular, to have easy replacement of batteries and other components. You can do it yourself. You can take it to any repair facility. So it's really, what we do is design criteria that enable longer use, repairability, and this is actually one of the best things you can do to reduce those lifetime carbon emissions as well. So just listing here, you'll see some of the criteria that we include in TCO Certified. It's really about getting smarter design up front so that when you buy the product, it makes it easier to use longer. You'll get longer product support, longer security support, warranties and the like, and it's easier to repair and recycle and give it a second life.
Fantastic. Thank you for that that origin story and explanation, Claire. I guess, in terms of, we'll dig in a little bit later in terms of, I suppose, your work with industry to get them on board with this. But what I would love to do is to bring in Paul Smith at this stage, just to talk about how Right to Repair sort of came to New Zealand, and give us a bit more of a understanding of the movement here, and who were some of the players.
Great, thanks. Good to see everybody here, because it's such a good topic to talk about. It's something that we can all get really passionate about. So here, I guess repair here came from a real grassroots Kiwi attitude of, we want to fix things, we want to keep things working. It's that whole, I don't want to be cliched, but it's that whole number 8 wire mentality of, we're stuck down here at this part of the world. We don't have massively great access to products. And so we've got this attitude of keeping things going. And that developed into a series of repair cafes. So it was a real volunteer-led thing. So a repair cafe started about 2015, 2016, but they really took off around 2020. There are now 75 of them around the country, and over 200 events. And essentially it's a bunch of volunteers, and it's getting people with some repair skills who want to repair things together with people who have stuff that they want to get repaired, and they don't know how to do it. So it's a little bit about fixing stuff, and it's a little bit about sharing those skills and that education, and to share the passion for repair and keeping things going. I was working at Consumer New Zealand at the time doing the product testing, and we started to see in a lot of the surveys we were doing about faulty appliances that people really wanted to repair stuff. But then there was a bit of a disconnect between that intent to say, we want to repair these things, we don't want to throw them away, but there weren't so many people actually repairing it. And I think that came down to the problem that it's quite difficult to repair things. You're not supported for repair, and it's a pain, right? And everything's directing you to buy something new instead. That's what most of the businesses want you to do. So we did a bit of an investigation to look into this in a bit more detail, and this was Project Mixer that we did, where we bought some food mixers, we created a fault in them, put a GPS tracker, and then returned them to the store as faulty, because we were just interested to find out these things were really easy to repair. They're literally one cable, one wire removed from inside. And we wanted to really confirm that they were getting repaired and everyone was doing the right thing. And what we confirmed was most of them were going to landfill. And this was, it wasn't a surprise. It was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise. I think we knew it was going on, but this just confirmed it. And the point for me was if the brands and manufacturers aren't trying to repair things that are being returned to them, of course they're not supporting us to repair things 3, 5, 7 years down the line. So they're not making, they've not got the parts and the attitude themselves to repair it. So they're not going to make that available to us as well. And that sort of explained a little bit about this disconnect of why we're not repairing things. So that got me involved in it anyway. And that's become pretty much what I do now. So we've
Well,
had
I'm
some.
just really sorry, just to grab you before we move before you sort of move on from this. I'm really interested to know the brand or the distributor where you got these mixes from. You don't have to name names, but I was interested to know, were they claiming that these products would be repaired? Were they making any claims around, what happened to them? And was that obviously at odds with what you found with it inevitably going to landfill?
No, I guess to be fair to them, when we returned them, nobody said we were going to repair these. The shocking thing was in only one of the 4 cases, did anybody even bother to open the box and confirm that the thing was broken. One of the retailers, who's a big, well-known low-budget retailer that starts with a letter close to J in the alphabet. The Saturday assistant directly said, we asked if it was going to be repaired because that would be great, and they directly said, no, this is going straight out to the bins, and they weren't wrong.
Okay.
Within 24 hours, it was in the landfill. Yeah, so no, nobody was really making that claim. But then I guess nobody really asks, do they? We're all really quick to accept that, oh, I've got a new product or I've got a refund. And
Yeah, well, I
that's
think
what we
that raises
sold.
a really important point around behavior. And we often talk about overconsumption in terms of what we do as well. Aside from that sort of behavior change element, what are some of the other, I suppose, more technical barriers to repair that we see in New Zealand and further afield?
The key thing, if you want to repair something, the first thing I think is understanding that thing is repairable, that there's information and there's advice out there. So that is actually the first thing you want to do. And you're not put off by the idea that I just don't know where to start. And that's one of the things that we got back in a lot of the surveys when we started asking people more around the barriers to why they're not repairing things. And quite often it's, I don't know where to start. I don't know who to talk to. I haven't got the skills myself, so what do I do? And then you get into the nitty-gritty of, can it be repaired? So are there parts available? Does it need any skills to take it apart, to fix it? Can you find somebody to do it? But I think for me, the main barrier is information. It's just knowing that it is possible. And in a lot of cases, it is possible.
Okay. Paul, look, we have the Consumers Guarantees Act Amendment Bill that is being sort of looked at the moment. Are you able to give us a bit of a summary of, I guess what it is, and I don't know if you want to get your crystal ball out and do some, give us some predictions of what might happen, but we'd be all ears.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so we've got a piece of legislation that's in front of Parliament at the moment, which amends our Consumer Guarantees Bill, Consumer Guarantees Act. So a little bit of history. The Consumer Guarantees Act was passed in 1993, I think.
Wow.
And it's pretty much been unchanged since then. It's a really good piece of legislation in that it guarantees the fit for purposeness, the ongoing durability of a product. So it overwrites the idea of a manufacturer's warranty. which usually, they'll warranty something for a year or so, but you'd expect most products to last much longer than that. And it sets these goals of what's reasonable for life of this product and what should you expect from it. So if a product fails a few years down the line, and that's not reasonable to expect it to fail in the way it did, then you've got redress, and you can go back to the retailer and you can say, hey, this isn't right. You need to fix this for me. And one of those fixes in the Consumer Guarantees Act is the offer of repair, but it's not very strong. And there's a clause in the Act that says manufacturers or retailers don't have to offer repair if they make it clear up front that they're not going to repair anything. And in practice, that means somewhere buried on a website, it says we don't repair stuff. So there are easy ways to get out of repairing things. So this amendment bill was put forward by the Green Party as a members' bill. So I had to learn about this. The members' bills all go into a ballot. So they go into a hat, and every few months, a couple of them are drawn out of the hat. And then that's a way to get legislation in front of government that the government itself might not put forward. So this came out in April. We're now waiting for it to go to its first reading. And that will, if it passes the first reading, it gets enough support, it will go into select committee, and it will actually be debated by government, by MPs, which is brilliant, because that's the first time we'll have had repair being talked about at government level. And what this does is it intends to put much stronger elements of repair into the Consumer Guarantees Act. So it says you've got to provide parts, you've got to provide this important information about how to repair something. It's a lot of elements of right to repair that we've seen overseas, but applied into the Consumer Guarantees Act. It's really powerful, potentially, and there are a couple of big issues with it, but that's why it goes into the debating process. I guess the issues are it's really wide ranging. So the Consumer Guarantees Act applies to every product that's sold in New Zealand, whether that's, shall we say, an umbrella or whether that's a car. It doesn't matter. So these requirements for repair would apply to everything in the way this bill was written, which is brilliant, but it's also a massive stretch to get to that point.
I guess on that, has there been much vocal opposition to date?
We've not heard any opposition. When right to repair legislation's gone through overseas, the opposition has all come from the industry and manufacturers. We haven't heard any of that. I don't know why. I guess because our industry is not quite as organized, I think, here in terms of manufacturer groups. We've done a bit of work, and we've been working behind the scenes as people who are trying to advocate for this, talking to as many politicians as possible. And it really comes down to whether it gets enough support from the government, parts of the government coalition, to pass it through this first reading. I believe Labour are going to support it, which is great. We've talked to a couple of national MPs, and they are open to it. I think one of the problems we've got is the whole political thing, that it's come from the Greens, so that instantly says that there are parts of our political system that will not want to pass that just because of where it's come from. But what we've seen overseas, and particularly in the US, is this has not been a partisan issue. This is, the right to repair is about people repairing stuff they own. It's about owners' rights. It's not necessarily a green or an environmental issue. And there are ways that all sides of the political spectrum can get behind it. So we're still hopeful. We're really hopeful that it will get enough support.
Thanks so much, Paul. I've just seen a comment from Nadine in the chat. The ballot was also how the Waste Minimisation Act 2008 came about. It's a bit of a wacky system, isn't it? Having this lottery for such important issues. I know we have an American staff member who kind of looked at us with just no words when we described how the ballot system worked, but it is what it is, I guess. Saskia, I'd love to hear from you about, so this is, what we're looking at in New Zealand, what's being done overseas effectively, and what lessons could we learn, do you think?
Thank you for the great interaction so far, and I think the international view has already been mentioned a few times. But obviously, we see a lot of things happening right now in Europe in regards to the right to repair and the R2RD, I think it's called, right to repair directive, and has been put in place in the European Union, still having to go through the formal process, but that will definitely mandate the repairability of products if that all goes through the way that they're proposing it, which is really cool. And what I put on the slide here is one of the things that always gives me hope to actually look at the fact that the non-repairability of things, the planned obsolescence, was actually just done by design too. So and how quickly we have adopted that. I don't think anybody was asked at the time, though, did you want our products not to be repairable anymore? But they did that anyway, and they being it's 1933 that the words first were introduced to help with the depression, but it was really after World War II that it became a real thing, and they used it to get out of the World War II recession and get the economies up and running, and they started creating campaigns to actually say to people, hey, don't repair anymore, just buy something new, so that the economy was starting to go, and people just grabbed onto it, right? We got brainwashed into it, and like the amount of materials that we started using because of that, the material used even in the last 50. Sorry, somebody said something. Okay, even in the last 50 years, material use has increased over three times in the world. This is not specific, international or New Zealand. And the great thing is we can design it out again, and that's what we're definitely seeing in Europe at a faster pace probably than here. One of the things I wanted to show as well is the attitude currently in the Netherlands, where they're also starting to link it to more than just, obviously we talk about it as a thing to do from an emissions perspective. It's a total no-brainer to think about, if I hold on to my product for longer, I will reduce emissions, because in most products, the manufacturing of the product itself is where the most emissions sit. So if you just look at it from an emissions perspective, to me, it's like if you hold on to it for a few years longer, obviously you are going to reduce your emissions. But one of the things also is, as you can see the kit, how do you feel when you actually repair something? If you can hold on to it and you repair it, something that you like, it makes people feel good. It is good for our wellness. It's good for overall happiness of people to actually be able to repair things and to help with that. And then the repair cafes obviously also play an incredibly important part in community connections. It was a concept that originally came out of the Netherlands, the repair cafes, and obviously the world grabbed hold of it, which is amazing. But if you see here, even in Tamaki Makaurau, the community that is built around the repair cafes, and the joy that people get out of volunteering or out of sharing things and learning and that sort of thing is incredibly amazing. And we should not forget the systemic impacts of all of this as well. And the focus on creativity, for instance, that's the other thing. Like there's heaps of universities in the Netherlands that's starting to get involved in this, just because it puts boundaries on people, right? To sort of go, okay, we're going to not design new anymore. We're going to actually see what we can do with the things that we already have, linking nicely to planetary boundaries as well. but the creativity that invokes is incredible. And that's what we need, right, to get ourselves out of all the different crises that we have. And you can definitely see that happening in Europe as well, which will start impacting on New Zealand for sure. And I know that the blunt branding and strategy, I know they're very big advocates for high quality and durability, and maybe they want to add a little bit of what they're seeing in regards to the requests that they're getting out of the international market from an export perspective for that durability, because it gives people joy too.
Yeah, Greg and Neil, do you want to jump in? And have you had any, I suppose, as Saskia mentioned, inquiries from overseas markets that want to see repair as an option with your products?
And that's a really interesting one, I think, because for us, that's really the heart of our business, is the durability of our product, and that's why people pay more for it. And to get traction in these global markets with that is actually really, really difficult. Like New Zealand as a market has taken it on so much quicker than anywhere else in the world. Not just because it's home market, it makes sense, but to actually get into these global markets and actually find people with that attitude to actually get, momentum has actually been quite tough. So it's growing, but it's something that's quite hard to tap into.
Yeah, I think you can generalize by, like, in Europe, we get a lot of traction on repair. We see it probably one of our, well, outside of New Zealand, it's probably one of our biggest uptakes of repairability. But in the US is less so. And then if you go to Asia, it's pretty well non-existent, and you kind of have to really push your message. So yeah, it's very different right across the world. So
this is part of the challenge of being pioneers, isn't it? Thank you both. And Saskia, I'm still kind of a little bit gobsmacked by the ending the depression through planned obsolescence title there. I kind of nerd out later and go looking to find a bit more about Bernard London. He's got a bit to answer for in my book. It doesn't look like we've got any Q&As now at this section, but please feel free to just chuck them into that Q&A box, and we'll try and tackle them as we go, and keep this as engaging as we can for you guys. But we're going to move on now into sort of discussing more around the, I suppose, the environmental impacts of a lack of repair, and the environmental benefits, which Saskia obviously has already touched on a little bit. But Claire, I'm really keen to bring you back into the conversation, because electronic waste is a huge issue, and I would love to get your insights on how require your mandated repair potentially can have an impact on that.
Yeah, for sure. And just I wanted to start with a couple of facts and something that Saskia mentioned. Well, let's start with this one, e-waste, this alone, right? So if we think about electronics we're throwing away, since 2010, that amount has doubled worldwide, doubled. So, and that curve is not on a downward trend. So if we think about that, and then we also think about something that Saskia brought up, the amount of embedded carbon. So the lifetime emissions in a computer, let's say, it's around 80 to 90% of those emissions have already occurred by the time that computer gets to your desk. So what we really need to be thinking about is, yes, repair when we're done using it, but we need to design these products so that we're preventing excess manufacturing in the first place. So we need what's already manufactured to last as long as it can, and that's the absolute number one best way that we can reduce those lifetime emissions. So if we started, if we kind of understand those two basics, I think that's a really good motivator. And those basics don't apply just to electronics. Well, what's not an electronic product these days, right? Cars and clothing and what have you can also fall into that bucket. But if we look at environmental impacts of electronics, I kind of like to group it into upstream and downstream. So if we just look at this idea of replacing products all the time, let's say you get a computer every 3 or 4 years and a phone every 3 and 4 years, there's a lot of natural resources that go into those new products. I was on a panel the other day, and someone from the mining industry was there, and we were talking about this. And he mentioned that in the next 10 years, we have to extract more copper for our electronic devices than we've ever extracted before. I mean, it's massive. So we think about the depletion of scarce resources, valuable resources, when we keep replacing our devices with new ones. So that's kind of an upstream, a future environmental impact. And then if we look at what we have already, and if we're tossing that away, computers particularly are full of plastics, and in those plastics are things like flame retardants. In the cables, we have phthalates and plasticizers, we have adhesives, we have lubricants, lots of these forever chemicals that we're all starting to understand a little bit more. Here's what we need to know about chemicals. Only about 1% of the literally thousands of chemicals that come onto the market every year, only about 1% of those are ever tested for any kind of environmental or human health hazard. So you've got products with tons of chemicals inside them. We don't know the impact of those chemicals. What they are proven, many of them, to do, particularly flame retardants and plasticizers, they persist in water environments. They're showing up in breast milk. They're showing up in all kinds of human tissue and the biological and then the natural environment. So again, we need to keep them in use, but we also need to know what's in them. We're doing quite a lot of work in this space, in that all the chemicals that are in the products we certify have been independently verified. We know what they are. We know what their hazard profile is. So it's about preventing these items from getting in the waste stream in the first place, but also about preventing future degradation of the environment. So the best thing is use what you have longer, but think about how you're going to do that. Are we going to have, say, a first use of 4 years, 3 or 4 years, then repair it and redeploy it in the organisation? We're seeing a lot of organisations start to act in this way. Maybe you have some functions in your company that sort of demand higher processing power, whatever, and then you could repair those products and use them in a less intensive function in your organisation. This is actually really, really doable. A refurbished computer has an immense amount of power. They are designed to last that long. We're not making them last that long in some ways. And we do have some challenges with planned obsolescence, with lack of software support and security patches. We can talk about that in a minute. But I really think we need to just understand that that's the longer use that is not just preventing these devices going to landfill, it's reducing their lifetime emissions as well. So it's an upstream, downstream thought process.
Fantastic. And Claire, is there any, this has got your badge on it, TCO, so I'm assuming, is there anything on this slide that you wanted to call out specifically?
Yeah, and sorry for the fuzzy graphic, that's a bit shonky, isn't it? But I would say if anyone wants to go to our website, tcocertified.com, we have a bunch of resources there. You can look at all the products that we certify. There'll be all the brands that you know and love. But we have a new service called a report generator, and you can actually build a list of products that you buy, put in how many you've bought, how long you plan to use them for, and you can build your own little portfolio and measure this carbon reduction potential through using 1, 2, or 3 years longer than you had originally planned. And it'll give you some actual numbers on how much you can reduce that lifetime carbon footprint over time.
Fantastic. Yeah, TCO's, it really is a brilliant website. We use it ourselves. If you need to find IT equipment, it's extremely easy to use their product finder. So I'm definitely encourage anyone on the call to check that out. And it wouldn't be a webinar hosted by EcoChoice if we didn't mention procurement. So particularly if you're from an organisation that has significant buying power or staff, and you need a lot of these products, it's really important. This is a great way for you to lessen your impact. Thanks so much, Claire. I guess this is both a question for you, Paul, and Saskia. Saskia at Proxima works with a number of different businesses as well. I'm really interested to hear some success stories. Obviously, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there as well, but there are some like market leaders and innovators in this space, and I'd love to hear about sort of the way that they're paving. Aside from Blunt, obviously, we'll talk to you guys a bit more in a second. Oh, Saskia, these look like your slides, so I'm going to we'll start with you.
They're very different.
Now we're on Paul's slides.
Yeah, let's go to Paul first.
Okay, Paul, you're up.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the businesses that are actively refurbishing and reselling products and giving them a second life. Because one of the issues, and yeah, if we're going to keep things in use, which is the goal, one of the things we've got to get around is our innate desire to want to replace things with something new. And that's a difficult one to fix. But that means that actually the repair and the refurbishing doesn't necessarily have to be to the same owner. So one of the things we found when we followed some of these products that we tracked was some of them stayed in the market. One of them went to this place up in Auckland, Appliance Outlet, that I'd never heard about before. But they have an operation where they collect a lot of the returns from some of the brands some of the brands that will work with them. A lot of them won't. And they refurbish them and then they resell them. So we literally traced our mixer back to this place and tried to buy it back. I actually ended up buying 3 mixers because until I found the one that was ours. But we ended up buying the mixer back, and we bought a $400-$500 food mixer for less than $200 with a full 1-year warranty, fully protected by the Consumer Guarantees Act. It was brilliant. And there should be more of this. And this sort of talks to me about repair, and that if repair is easy, then it becomes a profitable thing to do. And talking to the guys at Appliance Outlet, it's a struggle because they're constantly battling the issues that we have when we're trying to repair things. It's not that easy. It's not that easy to get parts. They have a warehouse where they're essentially trying to scavenge parts from all the different returns. So they might get 3 food mixers to make one good one that they can sell. And that all takes quite a lot of time. So it's about if we can make repair easy and we can make it convenient and we can make it cheap, it is not only good for us as consumers, but it's good for businesses who are trying to then make a profit and make a sustainable business out of that. There are places like this dotted around, and it's a lot more prevalent in the tech space with refurbished tech. But we're starting to see it with appliances and some other products as well. And I think that would be a good sign that we're getting repair right, is that it becomes something that you can actually innovate and create a sustainable business out of.
Well, I just want to pick up on one thing you said at the very beginning when you started talking about Appliance Warehouse. You said they working with the brands that wanted to work with them, and I was just wondering, can you talk to us a bit about the issue around things like proprietary parts and tools and those sorts of things that I'm guessing there's some pretty big hurdles for the likes of Appliance Warehouse in regards to that.
Yes, we talked to them. We talked to a couple of others. One of them is out in Upper Hutt down here in Wellington, which is 100% Newbolds, who have a store that just is a second-hand store that they just take in whiteware, refurbish it, and sell that. And they had similar stories. So the big issue they have is actually getting hold of the products to start with, because the culture with a lot of the manufacturers is that their returned products are a problem to them, and doing anything with them is a cost. And the easiest way to deal with them is simply to chop the plug off and to throw them away. And there's nothing stopping them doing that. So that's the easiest, cheapest, most profitable route for them to deal with their returns. For someone like Appliance Outlet, they work with some of the brands, and they're the agent who does that on behalf of the brand. And as far as the brands are concerned, they're quite happy if Appliance Outlet took all their returns as their national return center and then threw them away on their behalf. But they choose not to do that and to try and refurbish and repair as many as they can. So the first thing is that whole system that doesn't create any incentive to keep this stuff in use. The incentive is to maximize or to minimize the cost, which is just to pay somebody to take it around the back and dump it into a landfill. So that's the first thing. And then the knock-on from that is if you're not intending to support the repair, then you don't make any of the parts or anything available. One of the things that 100% Newbolt's told us, I mean, they have a warehouse that's filled with bits of old fridges, doors, shelves, all sorts. And they told us that one of the problems they have is they have to scavenge parts, because if they had to replace most of the shelves in a fridge, the cost of new parts would be more than they could sell that fridge for. So they're not getting the support with the parts. So and that means for them, it's just a lot of time. It's difficult to turn that into a sustainable model because you're reliant on, well, I need another couple of those fridges that break, but not the parts that we need that have broken. So it becomes this sort of jigsaw puzzle of trying to put it all together. Yeah, so those were the big issues, but it was great to see that there are people trying to get through that. But to be honest, it seems to be a struggle for them, and it shouldn't be a struggle.
Thanks, Paul. We have a question from Kat. I'm just going to take them as we go. Again, just asking if there are anyone has any examples of manufacturers locally or globally who are embracing the right to repair or specifically designing for disassembly. And Kat, that's again really excited to have Blunt on the call to talk about their journey in a second. I guess from our knowledge, we know that the likes of, speaking to the repair cafes, that Makita Power Tools, for instance, do repair in the North Shore. You can take your gear in there and get it repaired. I guess in New Zealand, we don't manufacture so many electronics, but, there is a number of companies sort of in textiles and accessories and apparel that do offer repairs. So a lot of the sort of, shoe places I've been surprised to see actually offer it, but they keep a pretty low profile in terms of advertising it. And that's something I'd like to dig into with Blunt as well. But there's also the likes of, there's a brilliant story, and we had hoped they could join us on the call, but they're a very small company and we're a bit busy. But hopefully next time, Kaiwaka Clothing, which have been offering small family business that's been operating for decades and has always offered repair, and their items are often handed down through generations, which is really cool. They have a bigger presence in the Northern Hemisphere, funnily enough, and they use a network of furniture upholsterers to repair their gear as a way to make repair accessible. And they also have little repair kits that they send out as well. So it's a really cool little New Zealand business. I'm not sure if anyone else has any other examples. Paul, you've obviously pulled apart many a product in your time and probably have assessed whether there's anything locally that has been designed in such a way.
It's tough to pick many out. And one of the things that is actually something I've seen that has got better is the cordless stick vac. Everybody changed their vacuum cleaners to a cordless stick vac a few years ago, or a lot of people did. And then a few years down the line after that, realized.
Oh, Paul, I think we might have lost you, or is it me?
No, I think we've lost.
I think we might have lost.
Oh, well, that's a bummer. We will pick up on Paul once he's able to reconnect. I'll just, as we're waiting, I'll just cross over to the chat box again. So Mansi has put a question here. Can you provide us a list of manufacturers or brands that support repair or branding within Auckland? We would love to be able to do that. I guess what I would say is if you jump on our website, ecochoiceaotearoa.org.nz, all of the brands and products that we certify on there are held to strict product stewardship requirements. So that might be repair, it might be take back and recycle, those sorts of things. But there isn't a list at the moment, and that's something that we have been discussing with the likes of the government, and others around a repairability label, but part of it is kind of a wait and see to see what happens with the amendment bill that is going through the motions at the moment. But really good question. Definitely have a look around. It's not always, I suppose, explicitly mentioned as repair, but asking people about or businesses about their wider product stewardship is also another way to sort of do your homework on that front. I'm not sure if we've got Paul back yet.
Yeah, I am. Sorry.
Oh, you are back. Excellent. Do you want to pick up where you were, or we can also move on to having a bit more of a deep dive into business perspectives as well, if you prefer?
Oh, no, that's fine. It was just a quick one. So yeah, sorry, my Microsoft Teams just decided to reboot. I have no idea why. But no, I was just where was I? I'm talking about cordless stickbacks and people realizing that the batteries wear out, and actually they maybe last just a handful of years. The first of those models that we were seeing, the batteries just were not replaceable at all. So they were soldered in, or simply the batteries, the replacement batteries just weren't available. That has changed, and we're seeing brands like Dyson, and I do hesitate to recommend Dyson because I really don't like their product development of bringing out something new and exciting every year. It's just encouraging people to replace products, but they are at least now making all of their batteries and parts available, so you can go onto their New Zealand website and you can buy these things. They're not necessarily as cheap or always in stock as they should be, but it's progress from where we were just a few years ago when it was impossible to get hold of them.
Awesome. Claire, were you going to chime in there? I see you've come off mute.
Yeah, a couple of tips on the technology front on repair. Some examples. If you're a consumer and you have a product that you want to try and fix, there's a great resource called ifixit.com. You can go on there and they have any number of product manuals, repair manuals. They sell repair kits. Definitely check out ifixit.com. The other thing I want to point to is this, going back to this idea of sort of going upfront with looking at repair. There's a big problem in the IT space of used products, or let's say companies that have a lot of IT, giving it to an asset disposition partner and then sort of thinking we're good, right? Assuming that it's going to be repaired and reused. It's a huge problem with that right now. Those products are largely being sorted for what can be refurbished to a usable state and then remarketed, basically down marketed online for a very low value use scenario. We want to be there's some good examples out there of organisations, national governments. Ireland is the latest one to do this, to go out when they're tendering, to go out when they're asking industry for something, to say, we want 20% of our next procurement to consist of repaired products. So I think it's getting that big voice, that large customer voice to say, no, repaired products that still function at a high level are important and part of our sustainability strategy. We're starting to see more and more of this. It's incredibly impactful. It has sent a very strong signal to industry that these products need to be repairable, and we need to offer it as part of a new product offering as well. So it's really important not to just think about this when you're kind of done using it. What do I do with it now? Plan for your repair up front. And make it part of your procurement cycle. It's really impactful.
Stoked to hear another reference to procurement for all the procurement nerds out there.
Procurement is a hugely influential movement. You guys have so much power in procurement. We ask the IT industry every day, why do you come and ask for our certification? Procurement requests is the number one power of getting a lot of this sustainability work done. So you have a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would certainly encourage anyone on this call in Aotearoa to, if you're talking with other businesses, to talk about procurement, but also, there's a lot to be desired in terms of our own government's approach to procurement in this country. The rules are quite vague. It's look for an eco label generally around procurement, and not all of them are created equal, and it's buy things that contribute to a low emissions circular economy, which is open to interpretation as well. So we would certainly love to see a focus on buying products that are repairable or have been repaired in this country, and we've certainly seen a number of countries around the world do that, and in fact incorporate that into their nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. So yes, big fans of procurement here at EcoChoice, and by the sounds of it, also at TCO, which we loved you already, but even more so now. I'm just going to segue Claire into sort of us talking a bit more about the business perspective. And obviously TCO has had to work with a number of very large companies, brands that people recognize on this. And I was just interested to sort of hear a bit more about what that journey has looked like. I'm sure there's probably been first movers, but there's also probably been a couple of laggards and people that still haven't quite got with the program. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. I would say this is not coming as a surprise to the IT industry. They are well aware of the right to repair movement and the desire for all of us to be able to repair our products. There's been some resistance. I mean, not surprisingly, the business model has been immensely successful, replacing that product every year, every 2 years. And believe it or not, we have a big problem in this country, in the United States, with servers, for example, being shredded before they're even unboxed because someone had a data leak somewhere. So, this repairability is a looming issue for the IT industry. The business model needs to catch up to that. So there's a lot of very intentional and good thinking around this, but there needs to be a business case. Collection of products at scale is a really big challenge and can be a hinder to some of the sort of mainstream repair as a business model approach. Again, we mentioned before, I think the lack of specificity or action from buyers is also something we need to see more of. Really being intentional up front that repair is a viable product option in your organisation is really important. We see a big challenge is perceptions. We hear all the time that, well, I can't buy a used product for my CEO, that's insulting. And I think there's so many perceptions out there that we need to do a little myth busting around, right? So a lot of people come to us and say, well, what's the most energy efficient computer we can buy for our organization? Well, you know what? The most energy efficient computer or most sustainable computer is probably the one you're already using. So we as sustainability fans need to do a lot of educating and a lot of myth busting in our own organisation. So that's been a real learning curve globally, we found. Probably one of the biggest barriers right now is, we talked a bit about planned obsolescence, but we've also got to think about software support. A lot of buyers we talk to, that's their first thing they come up with. We'd love to use our products longer, but our operating system won't be supported over that extended period. The warranties are too expensive. The service plans are too expensive. And most of all, we're very concerned about data leakage and data security if we were to hand off our devices for repair and reuse somewhere else. So we're doing a lot of work in this space. We're requiring industry to offer extended support for all of this, extended warranties at a very limited cost, so that these things become less of a barrier. But if you follow the right to repair movement at all when it comes to technology, you're going to see more and more of brands doing what they're doing now. They're offering their repair schematics. They're offering repair kits more and more and more, but it's very much a result of this constant demand and pressure that they're seeing from their customers in the marketplace and from legislators, particularly in the EU.
I think you've done a great job, Claire, of answering Kat's question that was in the chat box. So thank you very much for that. I am going to put you in the hot seat and ask you to spill the tea around. So obviously, you know, in terms of the pressure from consumers and legislators is there. It took a long time for our friends at Apple to get on board with repair. Can you talk to us about that and what eventually got them over the line?
Apple is Apple. Yeah, I obviously I can't speak for Apple. I think I can't speak specifically to what got them over the line, but I don't think it's dissimilar to the other brands. I think it's a business model consideration, and I think certain brands value the privacy of their proprietary nature of their product and the proprietary nature of their brand as well. And I think none of these brands does anything by accident. And so I think anything that comes out as far as repairability options go is extremely well thought through. There's also safety concerns with some of these products. Let's not forget, it's not just a business model. We have a lot of safety concerns around some of these products if we just kind of open it up to a free-for-all to anyone to not only repair, but modify these products as well. That's part of the equation. So I know that's a bit of a political answer to your question, Laura, but...
No, it was very insightful while also being diplomatic. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Excellent. Thanks, Claire. Just keeping an eye on the chat box. Carolyn, great point. Really great to see refurbished product is now part of the all of government ICT procurement program. I was unaware of that. That is awesome news. It would be amazing if they tracked that data so we could see how effective it was in terms of implementation. Kate, loving this kōrero. I think borrowing, renting items is an important part of this topic too. I think you're absolutely right. And it's brilliant to see more service-orientated offerings come to market. So yeah, really, really great point there. It's more affordable for everyone to repair, look after things. Absolutely. Tool libraries. Sorry, I'm learning a bit in this chat as well. Terrific. And I should mention that the repair cafes, if you jump online, you can find their opening hours and exactly where they are. If you've got, you know, a cake mixer that needs repairing or what have you. Perfect. Okay. Blunt, thank you so much, Neil and Craig, for being so patient with us. Really excited to sort of dive into your journey with repair. Can you kind of give us a bit of an understanding of where, you know, how long have you been doing it? What was the impetus? What was the catalyst for you guys to sort of look at making your product repairable?
Sure. So we've been around for a while now, but the vision from day one for me when I first thought of this idea of creating a new umbrella was just to make the best product in the world. And the sustainability sort of repair side wasn't really high on the agenda. It was really about just making the best product. So I spent a long time trying to do that. And it took 10 years to actually get something to market. So that's how deep I went on it. But getting to market, like to do something different and disrupt this industry, it was just really expensive to get a manufacturer to make something that was quite different. They just didn't want to get on board because their objective in life is to make things faster and cheaper, even though we were with a really good factory. So it took quite a lot of energy just to get something out of them, and the cost to actually get a product out of them was like twice the cost, or even 3 times the cost than what other umbrellas cost. So by the time I got to market, we were sort of 3 times the retail price. So when it came to selling to consumers, the expectation from the consumer side was just massive. So that sort of led to service needing to be really high to keep all these people happy, because from day one, everyone thought they were making such a big leap to pay so much more for this product, even though the value was there. So repair fell into that whole situation for us. So from day one, just to keep people happy and keep this business alive, It was just really about repairing and doing what we could to keep our products going as long as possible. So from day one, really, repair just fitted into our business model, because we just found that the more repair we did, the happier consumers were, and that whole experience, like it's been mentioned earlier, when people actually repair things, their whole emotional connection to what they've actually got just goes up a whole level of notches, to the point where they actually want to buy more of your product. So we sort of have got this momentum going where repair within our business model is super complementary, which has only really happened because from day one we had the intention to sort of be the best. So there's a lot more value in the chain heading in that right direction. Whereas like in the umbrella industry generally, it's totally the other way around. It's totally planned obsolescence. So we've kind of reversed that cycle, which wasn't really the intention day one. It was just purely about being the best. And that's really exciting. I think for New Zealand, in terms of offerings to the world, is actually we're going to be niche whatever we do. But if we're going to go out to the world, this is a really good way to see the right behaviour as a New Zealand message going out, as opposed to, I guess, products coming into the country and trying to filter them for doing the right thing. It's sort of just turning the whole value cycle around. So we're very small in this big scheme of things, but it's an interesting model, we think, to base other products on. Because if you can do it with an umbrella, you could probably do it with many other products.
Yeah, I just think it's a really smart business mindset. And I should also congratulate you guys on your B Corp certification recently. Really, really awesome to see that. Obviously, doing things that are beyond just repair in order to have earned that. I'm really keen to, I guess, something that we have heard from businesses who do have repair as an option at the moment has been almost a reluctance to advertise repair as a service, because it can give the impression that the product isn't well made to begin with, or is prone to breakage. Is that something that you guys have grappled with? And if so, how did you tackle it?
Yeah, primarily we talk about it as service more than repair, because the repair does have that stigma behind it. Yeah, and I think, yeah, we do have our ethos, which is a repair, not replace, but sort of as a backup behind the actual service we give when we talk to customers. But yeah, it's in terms of how people perceive it. Once they get on board, they seem to be really, really like into it. Like Greg said, we get that emotional connection, but we do get that reluctance that Paul and others have touched on with customer. If they get an umbrella that breaks within the first 3 months, the expectation is that they want a new one. So we've definitely got a mindset change that needs to happen over time. But yeah, it does vary, but there's definitely a lot of people who are pushing for a new one.
The other challenge, the other challenge on that is because we're a global brand, but the actual service side of it is a very localized thing. So to actually go out, and obviously you can sell products to anywhere in the world at the moment with e-com and whatever, but to service it is actually a really localized sort of physical thing. So the whole logistical side of actually being able to deliver on a promise of repair globally is actually is quite difficult. So you can only promise so much. So to actually vocally go out there and saying we're repairing everywhere and everything is not true. So we've got to be really careful on that front. So we have to keep it localized, what the promise is, which is actually very hard for communication.
And have you guys, I seem to recall, but I might be mistaken, I have seen some other businesses do this in terms of trying to, and it's definitely probably a bit easier when you've got a smaller product, but I've seen sort of quite a few people have put like YouTube videos up on instruction, how, giving people instruction on how they can repair and things like that. Is that something that Blunt has done so far?
Yeah, well, we're rolling out sort of upgrades to that all the time, and very shortly we're going to roll out actually what we're calling the repair app, where it will lead everyone to ordering their own part, whatever they require, with YouTube video, etc., so they can actually walk down that DIY process a lot better. And over the last, my time here at 7 years, we've been really working our product development to make it more modular. So that is leading towards that DIY, do it yourself. And as Greg touched on there, the logistics is a big issue and costs around that. So the DIY side of it removes a lot of that logistical challenge for us. And by having it, people can go online and order their own part. They select what is wrong with the umbrella, whether it's a tip, handle or something, they can just, it's all linked to their account. They can make sure they get the right part. And if there's any questions or it's not clear, they'll actually be able to like dial straight into our customer service, and we'll send them in the right direction or have it brought in to be repaired if it's outside of their capabilities.
Absolutely brilliant. Very cool. I was just wondering, again, putting you guys on the spot a little bit, but do you have any stats around, I guess, the number of umbrellas you repair each year, those sorts of things? And also, just make it a double-barreled question, you mentioned that you do have people still ask for replacement umbrellas. How do you respond to those questions?
Okay, well, firstly, in terms of how much we repair, so the head office here in Auckland, obviously servicing primarily New Zealand, and probably the majority of it's Auckland and Wellington. We get about 2,500 repairs a year coming in. You put in perspective, we're selling 100,000 into the New Zealand market a year, and we've been doing that for some time. So proportionally of failures, we're less than 1%, but it does seem that 2,500 is quite a lot. But of those 2,500 a year, we're between 60 and 70% of that is product that's over 4 years and out of warranty. So it's there's a huge uptake in that sort of like getting older product service. I can see we've just popped up our life cycle assessment slide, and it's pretty interesting. This is for our classic umbrella, and it shows that the blue line is our carbon footprint, and the red line is then if we have to repair a blunt umbrella every 4 years. And we like to think we're more durable than another umbrella, but even if we weren't, and we look at the cost of replacement of another umbrella on a 10-year cycle or a 4-year cycle, you can see the carbon footprint gain that we make over any other manufacturer. So it's good, and that's for carbon. We've got the same study that's done on all the different chemical makeups and energy use, etc., on our product. And while sometimes we start off not quite as good because we do have to put a little bit more energy into being a more durable product, over time you claw that back really quickly.
I mean, that's the value of looking at these life cycle assessments, right? It tells you where the hot spots are and where you can improve. It's about sort of that business intelligence. And I suppose kind of in that vein, in terms of the product that has come in to be returned, have you seen at any stage, I guess, similar parts or components that are needing repair, and has that caused you to sort of again look at the design in some way?
I think we actually look at our product as a series of products put together. It's almost like a Lego system. So when you think of, say, our canopy, we think of it more like a garment rather than a canopy to an umbrella. And I think the more you can break a product down in that way, the healthier it is in terms of dealing with it in terms of repair, and whether it gets recycled at the end of use, or all the different sort of, I guess, strategies for different parts of the product. But a big part of that is it coming apart so that these separate pieces can actually be their own thing when it comes to end of life or for repair. So that's that whole modular build that we go really deep on when it comes to creating our products. So yeah, did that answer the question? Sorry.
No, absolutely did. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think to touch on that a little bit more, we've in the last year we actually bought our umbrella now, which basically goes together like Lego. It is our high-end one, but it's the whole system clips together, and it is literally you remove the shaft and then the whole part can just disassemble. So we could send out pretty well any sub-assembly if it's depending on what part it's broken, and a consumer can replace any part of that now. So it's a really cool technology that we have for it, but it is hard to implement as the umbrellas get smaller and smaller because of constraints with size.
Yeah.
It's like that would have been a fun thing to design.
A little more challenging.
Yeah. Umbrella
challenge.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm just going back to the chat again. We've got a few more comments in here. Saskia, in terms of some other businesses that deserve a bit of a shout out. The 3-generation guarantee with cookware company Ironclad Pan. I have one of those and they are brilliant, so I can absolutely vouch for that. And on an international scale, Patagonia. And what else have we got here? So a question here from Paris. How widespread is planned obsolescence these days versus manufacturers not prioritizing repairability and just trying to make cheap products quickly? I don't. Is there anyone from the panel that is, feels particularly compelled to answer that one, or in a good spot to do so?
I think the whole machine around this planned obsolescence is it's such a huge thing of momentum. And it's not just an attitude within businesses that's the problem. It's actually like people are stuck in the cycle of value. And it's such a difficult thing to get out of. So it's like when it's just talked about companies just need to do this or just need to do that in terms of spare parts and things, everything costs money. Like there's energy required to do anything. Repair is expensive. The service of repair is expensive. So unless you've actually got that intention from the beginning to start that value cycle, you're really up against it. So there's a huge amount of momentum going the wrong way out there. So it's really discovering what the seeds are to actually shift it, to disrupt it. And we know going into the umbrella industry how difficult that was. So the world's really up against it, but we've got to be really smart about it, and we can't look at these problems in isolation. Repair is a really fantastic value add, but if you just look at it by itself and you look at it in the New Zealand context from a consumer here, you're really going to be up against it. You've really got to look at the global systems of how these products are actually made to actually make a difference, and it's really tough. I think that's the reality of it. Yeah, but we're coming from our angle on that. So.
Excellent. Paul and Claire, I both saw you unmute as well. Did you want to chip in on that one?
Yeah, I would echo that completely. I think this is just an incredibly complex issue, and in our case, in a massively complex product category, right? So I think the reality is these days the IT industry has fully heard the voices of not only their customers, but even more so the regulations that are coming at them quick and fast. And I'd say that's probably the biggest driver in their space, and basically forcing repairability to become more mainstream. So, and I think that will continue, but it's definitely not the case in other product categories, as we know. And someone mentioned apparel and garments have come up more than once in today's session. So that's that's deeply embedded.
Certainly. Paul, did you any further thoughts from you or Saskia?
That sort of summed up what I was thinking, but there is evidence way back that planned obsolescence was a thing, that things were being designed to physically fail quickly. But I think it's now mostly down to the entire system is built around making things the easiest possible way to return as much profit as possible from it. And unfortunately, doing it any other way is not necessarily the easiest or the most profitable. So it's limited in who will go down that path. So something's got to change to force that path, because it's not going to happen by itself in most cases.
Team Blunt, would you agree with that? Do you think mandatory? We need regulation.
Yeah, we do, definitely, but the system really needs to be looked at behind it, because I think mass production and planned obsolescence just go hand in hand so much, because humans are driven towards efficiency. So that's where mass production has just enabled it so much. So there's huge momentum in that just to make things more and more efficient, and that isn't being repairable in a lot of ways. It's just a different way of thinking in terms of making things. But I'd just like to add something from the consumer side. It's like one thing that works massively well for us is just the incentive for the consumer to actually want to repair something. Because you can have something that's actually made beautifully and so repairable, but if the consumer doesn't want to repair it, you're wasting your time. And people are so busy, and it's an act that actually takes a lot of effort and I guess intention. So the way we love to look at it is just that emotional connection with products, like owning less, but just having deeper relationships with your products, where the longer you own them, the longer you want to own them. Like we just love that in design as well, because that's when people really make an effort to keep something alive, even if it's not really built for repair. They actually want to keep it going. So I think that's a huge part of the whole equation.
How important do you think storytelling from a brand perspective is in terms of getting that across?
Oh, it's huge. Well, humans love stories, but I guess it's just having some substance in your story as well, making sure that it's actually like a genuine message there. But I don't know. I think we've been lucky at Blunt. We entered a category that had such low expectation from a consumer side, and to elevate that probably wasn't that hard compared to a lot of other categories. So we're the shining light, but at the same time, we haven't done anything that special. We've just attacked a category that was just really down as low as you can go. So yeah, it goes to show just what you can do if we just go in with the right intention.
Well, thank you again for your mahi, guys. It's, as you said, hopefully, some of the learnings that, obstacles that you've tackled and things like that can be a lesson for others. Saskia, I know we're almost at time, and I'll make sure that if there's any other questions, we can tackle those. But I was interested to know, just sort of going back a step regarding and Katami's put this in the chat as well. So repairability skills, and obviously we've got this wonderful system of repair cafes, but how else can we kind of push consumers to upskill themselves or ask for repairs or make that whole process a little bit more pleasant for them?
Yeah, thank you for asking, and thanks, Katami, for putting it in the chat as well, because indeed, what you can see in Europe, what is starting to happen as well, is that indeed the skills development of being able to repair, even if we have a repairability index or that sort of thing, is obviously something that needs to be part of that systemic change, right? Because, well, I'm sure that all of us have got unpleasant stories to tell about when you want to repair something and how hard it is to find somebody or yourself or the tools to actually be able to repair it. And in Europe, the European Union is definitely investing billions of dollars as well in the educational side of things. So because those skills have been lost, right, over the last 100 years. I mean, if you look, we might still be able to find people that will be able to teach us the skills that we actually need to repair, even if think about mending clothes and electronics and all that sort of thing. But talking back to what Blunt was saying as well in regards to the valuing of those skills, I mean, there has been again, this is campaigns, right? There was the It's Better to End Than Mend campaign in the US at the time, where they were just saying to people, it's not valuable that you want to repair. It's much, much cooler to go, to throw it away and buy new. And you can see that in the kids. You can see that even here in New Zealand, like with the school uniforms, where schools change colors so that you can see that you have a new uniform rather than a repaired old one. Or, it's that type of stuff is needing to change. And from a skills perspective, obviously we need to invest in that. I mean, to reinvest, to learn how to do things. And the repair cafes are a fantastic place where you can go to learn from the people that are voluntarily doing this. But we also need to start valuing the fact that actually this is not just a voluntary job. This is actually a job. And when we're talking about linking the interconnectedness, linking it to, the AI that is taking away certain jobs. I mean, how cool is it that we're going to go back to having jobs where people can actually add value by using skills that can repair things, that actually link back to creating a better environment and all that sort of thing. And we're falling behind. In New Zealand, we're taking money away even more so from education in general. And, with this, where you can see the EU upping investment in education, that's things all need to become in balance to actually be able to be implemented properly, because otherwise people are going to get indeed disappointed, even if we have it in a bill.
Thank you, Saskia. Really great points. Sorry, was someone else going to jump in there? I felt like No. Okay, great. Brigitte in the chat, and something I've totally omitted to mention, so my apologies, is that in addition to this being Maori Language Week, it's also the Repair Festival, Aotearoa, and there are 48 repair events all across the country, and Brigitte has very kindly put a link into the chat for you guys to check out which is the closest to you and get involved and maybe learn a thing or two. And I think we've got one other question before we wrap up the webinar, and it is from Susie in the chat. And Paul, I think this might be This might be your jam. Can someone talk a bit more about the proposed amendment bill, which you advocated for? Thank you very much. And which of the mentioned hurdles related to repairability it intends to address?
Sure. Stop me if I go down a big rabbit hole, because I could talk all day about this.
Well, you've got 7 minutes, so you're on time.
I won't use all of that. So the bill I've just opened the amended bill in front of me here. So it adds some clauses into the Consumer Guarantees Act, mainly around a guarantee that you will be able to get information, repairs, and spare parts. So it's aimed at consumers. One of the limitations of the Consumer Guarantees Act is it doesn't apply to business purchases. So it doesn't help with the procurement. So it's aimed at a consumer buying a product for their own use. But it says that for those goods that the manufacturer will take reasonable action to provide the facilities for repair, supply of spare parts, and information for diagnostics, software, and any other tools they use to maintain and repair and diagnose faults. They can't charge for the information, but they can charge for a reasonable amount for parts and tools and things like that, which is sort of in line with how a lot of the right to repair legislation in the US has phrased things. The problem, if I just jump into a problem with it, the limitation is how the Consumer Guarantees Act is enforced. And it comes down to individual consumers taking issue when these things aren't done. So at the moment, if you have a problem and you want to claim under the Consumer Guarantees Act that let's say a product's become faulty too soon, it's up to you to go back to the retailer or the manufacturer and argue your case. If they don't want to respond to that, you have to take them to the disputes tribunal individually, and then it gets judged. In most cases, it doesn't happen because the retailer will go, oh, you're right, so I'm not going to bother chasing it. Here you go, have a replacement product. But it's all down to individuals, and that enforcement or limited enforcement is one of the issues that I think needs to be fixed with this as it goes through, because what we've seen overseas is where there have been right to repair laws, legislation put in place, it needs some really serious enforcement to make it happen. Otherwise, I fear what we'll see here is a lot of manufacturers just not bothering, and when I go back and say, hey, I want this product repaired, they'll go, I can't really do that. You can take us to the disputes tribunal, or we can give you a refund or a replacement. And the vast majority of people will go, yeah, all right, I can't be bothered doing the other side of that. So without some real enforcement teeth, I think that's where it's going to fall down. But that's hopefully what the process is. We get through this first bit, and it's this, we want everything legislation, and then it gets made workable as it goes through the government processes.
What's the saying? Perfect is the enemy of good. Something like that.
Yes, and we just have to keep reiterating, this is the first time we've had this in front of government. We're way behind a lot of other territories with right to repair legislation. And the fear is, if we don't do something, we'll end up being that country where anybody can sell anything because they can't sell it anywhere else, but we can get it into Aotearoa because they don't have any legislation stopping us. So we've just got to be a little bit wary of that.
Thank you very much for the crash course on the amendment bill, Paul. And if you want to know more about the amendment bill and hear from Paul again, as I'm sure you will, there is a free online discussion this Thursday. Details are in the chat. So sign up for that if you want to get to grips a bit more with what has been proposed. But that kind of brings us to the end of our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I wanted to say a big thank you to Proxima, who has co-hosted and facilitated this discussion today. I just showed up and turned my computer on and asked some questions. They did the heavy lifting in the background, so massive thank you to you, and also to the rest of our panelists. Blunt, thanks so much, guys. Really great to get a business perspective. Claire, it's about time for that margarita, I think. Thank you again for joining us from Texas. And Paul, thank you very much. I know it's a busy week for you with all of these various different events and things, and really appreciate your knowledge and experience in this space. And Saskia, it's always a pleasure. You're just a fountain of knowledge, and really appreciate you giving up your time. So thank you, everyone. Any other questions, please send them through. We'll send out a recording of the webinar, along with any important links. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.